Hey everyone, welcome to Founders 365 with me, Stephen Haggerty. Today I'm joined by the founder of Kashmiri Tea House, Miss Asma Bandey. How are you, Asma? Oh, technical-ish.
Hey, you're back.
Technical-ish. We're back. Well, I just introduced you. I hope you could hear me.
I
But,
didn't.
well, it's all good.
Sorry, I
Welcome
don't.
to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for
I'm
having me.
glad. I'm glad the first technical hitch has happened already. So this is going to be good. Welcome as again for the third time
Thank
to the
you.
show. Thank you so much for being here. And I guess the first question, as always, is just give an overview of what Kashmiri Tea House is.
Sure. So Kashmiri Tea House is a botanical cold brew tea company. We make cold brew tea elixirs that are designed for people who are looking for gentle caffeine alternatives to coffee. So it's a green tea based cold brew tea. We make them as a bottled drink, so it's a ready to drink in three flavors, and they're sort of super low in caffeine, very low in sugars. We only use natural ingredients, so they're all natural sugars. It's sort of like 60 calories or less per flavor, depending on the flavor. And yeah, launched about a year ago
Fantastic. Love it.
in the UK only, selling direct to consumer.
Fantastic. So let's just go back in time then, because fairly new company makes me think what was going on for you to think, you know what, I'm going to start a tea company. That is what I'm going to focus my time on moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question because I have absolutely no background in food and drink. My professional background was in B2B sales, mostly technology sales. And actually, the reason I ended up moving into the food and drink space was from a personal need. I mean, this is quite a prevalent story in a lot of food and drink founders, but I was pretty burnt out from sort of work stress, life stress. I was developing a caffeine sensitivity that I didn't know was a caffeine sensitivity, but it was kind of impacting my day to day life and making sort of work anxiety and life anxiety worse. And so I started exploring what can I do to make my own health better, right? So I'd recognized that I was badly coping with a lot of the anxiety that I was having. And I just started looking into, okay, well, what are the triggers? Trying to connect the dots between sort of the feelings and the causes, or at least like the things that were making it worse. And caffeine became a very obvious answer to that question. And so I started looking for things that were already out in the market, stuff on the shelves, whether it was just in the regular supermarkets or in the specialty, health food stores that were low in caffeine because I didn't want to, or I didn't feel like I could completely cut out caffeine, at least not right away. And I wanted something that was low in caffeine, but also just not swapping the caffeine for something else.
Yeah.
And the reality was that everything that I could find on the shelves were what I affectionately like to refer to as diabetes in a bottle because they were just sugar,
Hmm.
and iced tea in general as a product group in the UK is just not very great. Um, and so I thought, okay, this isn't going to work. What can I do instead? And my background, my family is from Kashmir. It's a place in the Himalayas that has a really, really deep rooted tea tradition, culture of tea traditions. And the sort of key aspect of the tea traditions in Kashmiri culture is that number one, tea is not had for the purpose of, punch me in the face caffeine. It's had as sort of an experience that you have, like you start your day. It's a good, healthy thing to drink. Most of the teas that we have traditionally are also green tea based. And so you're getting a more holistic sort of health benefit from green tea as opposed to just, caffeine. Um, and there are a variety of teas that you have at different times of the day because as you go through your day, the caffeine consumption or the sort of general wisdom is that the caffeine consumption should go down, not, you know, remain consistent throughout the day because
Yeah.
of course then you will disturb your sleep.
Which is
and
what
also
most people
distribute it
do.
just
Well,
as
I
a
say,
team.
I say most
So I
people.
started just brewing it at home and then bottling it and taking it with me to work, which was, kind of a pain because it's just another thing that you have to do now. Um, and so I started looking into like, okay, well, how can I make this easier? What can I do? And that's when I came across cold brewing, which is obviously different to conventional hot brewing.
Hmm.
And I started taking it with me to work, and I would leave bottles. I would brew it at work the night before, and then leave it in the fridge. Um, and so the bottles over time just got bigger and bigger, so that I had to do it less and less frequently. And that kind of turned into a lot of questions from other people, a lot of people being interested in the office. It was one of those massive open plan offices where everybody shares the kitchen, and it's a bit like being back at uni because you don't know who's taking your stuff. So it just it triggered a question in my mind, like, hey, maybe there's a business here. And anytime I would speak to somebody about it, they would the most common sort of response would be like, hey, you're obviously very passionate about this, you should do something with it.
Mm.
um, and so I tested it out first because there's invariably that doubt in the beginning of, is this just people that I know being nice, or is there a legitimate business
Yeah.
proposition here? So I started doing my market research, looking into the RTDT space, ready to drink bottles of tea, and how it was a growing space from a consumer perspective across Europe, but also particularly in the UK, the wellness industry and the wellness space sort of moving at breakneck speed. Um, and one of the reasons why I was particularly motivated to do it is because when I went through that journey of exploring and trying to discover something that I could just buy and consume myself, one of the most frustrating things that I found, in addition to, diabetes in a bottle, was that this growing industry of wellness um, had a lot of great players and has a lot of, consumer products that are very good,
Hmm.
but also it within this industry is sort of a cottage industry of just nonsense, and to put it politely. And it is very frustrating because it's like people are having genuine health issues, like legitimate problems, whether
Yeah.
it's, in my case, it was anxiety, in other people's case, it's digestive issues,
A whole
immune
manner of things.
issues. Yeah, like loads of stuff that are people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and for one reason or another aren't able to get what they need through conventional channels, like just going to your GP. um, and so it just felt a little bit sort of disingenuous.
Mm.
Like I said, it's not everyone, but there are definitely a lot of brands out there that are doing this, like, oh hey.
Did that help with your motivation to start your own? Because you mentioned
Yeah.
there about testing it with your friends and family, and perhaps thinking, oh, are they just being nice? But then when you obviously started the research and you saw sort of the truth behind a few brands.
Yeah, and also when I first started testing it out, I tested it out at farmers markets, and the 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 thesis that I wanted to explore was, do people genuinely purchase these products? Because I know that
Hmm.
sounds a little bit stupid, but I just remember, going into health food stores and seeing things on shelves, and you'd have like 17 different types of the same product and 17 different price points. And I would just think to myself, like, are people legitimately buying this, or is it just a fad? And so, part of the great thing about doing farmers markets is that you get a massive cross section of a population that you would never necessarily otherwise find. Because, of course, with marketing, your conventional wisdom is, targeting. You should target
Hmm.
a particular audience, target your customer base. Whereas at that point, I didn't know, who is my customer base. Like, is it just people like me, or are there other people? Um, and so, long story short, the farmers markets progressed into, which then progressed into pop-ups. So I would do like ticketed catering, or excuse me, ticketed events for like afternoon tea style events. I did a residency for 3 months in Soho. For on Sundays, I took over a cafe, and I also did catering. And so the sort of journey through these different mediums of running a business or selling this product, but in these different mediums, was essentially me trying to figure out what, okay, there's a commercial like opportunity here.
Yeah, but where do you take it?
Yeah, what does it look like? Is it, you know, a shop? Do I open a
Yeah.
cafe, or is it, selling it to other people, or is it catering, or,
Plus doing it that way, you've got instant feedback of the product, which you
exactly.
may not get if you immediately thought, oh, I want to get this into Whole Foods or Planet Organic, you would skip that step entirely. How was it for you when you those first couple of farmer
You're
market?
frozen. I don't know if you can hear me.
Oh, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, you're back now.
Okay, good. How was it for you from those first couple of farm markets when you did go off that over that threshold of moving away from friends and family feedback into that stranger, someone you have no idea who it is,
Hmm.
feedback? How did that feel when they were like, yeah, no, this is good, and they were relating some of those same problems perhaps you had back to you?
Yeah. So the first thing that I like, my most sort of strongest memory of those days when I was at the markets was, well, two things. Number one, it's just being bitterly cold because I was always doing it somehow in the winter.
Market stalls in
Um,
England, full stop.
yeah, yeah. And then the second thing was just that I loved it because you get this literally, like, I have a career in sales over a decade, but there is a very different dynamic when you're selling a professional services product or a technology product to a business
Yeah,
versus when you're literally, like, quite literally on the street selling something to another person who hasn't come to you with the express intention of purchasing something. And so you don't know anything about them. You don't know if they've come and stopped by just to have a look at your, setup, or if they're actually someone who might need what you want or what you're making. And so the most amazing thing was, you'd have the exact same initial conversation with every single person that would come by, which is like, oh, what is this? Because number one, the vast majority of people in the UK don't actually know that Kashmir is a place, let alone a culture. And the so the conversation was always like, wait, Kashmiri tea, what is that? So I would have to explain, like, oh, there's this place and there are these people that are from this place. And then I would explain the tea traditions similarly to what I was describing a little bit earlier about there's teas for different times of the day, and we make these teas, and I make them because I look for gentle caffeine when I want something to drink. And so there was just one of two ways. It would be either, oh, not for me, thanks, or oh my God, that sounds amazing. That's exactly what I want. Not that they were particularly, woke up in the morning and set out on their day specifically to find a gentle caffeine
yeah.
tea brand. It was simply that having the conversation would make them realize that, yes, actually, that's exactly what I want. And so that was amazing because you get this very instant, like, no, not for me, or yes, I love it, like,
It's
immediate
like a
feedback.
in-person Venn diagram.
Yeah.
But what fascinates me as well is, by the sounds of it, so many people don't realise the negative repercussions of what they're consuming as well, which is crazy to think about in terms of just how much the awareness of what we consume has increased over the last 5-10 years for sure.
Yeah.
For
The thing that I do a lot of, and I've mentioned this to you before, is talking about the idea of mindful drinking, which very much sounds like it's going to be one of these, like, wishy-washy sort of,
it's
just
like you're
like,
not actually drinking
yeah,
anything, you're
yeah,
just pretending.
yeah, yeah. But it's like a really simple concept, which can apply to anything. It's not just caffeine or even drinking only. It's the idea of actually stopping and paying attention to what it is that you're consuming and how is this thing serving you, and is it serving you well? Meaning, to use the example of caffeine, in my case, it was like I was drinking coffee out of habit, not because I particularly, like, am obsessed with coffee or, like, it made me feel great. It was habit combined with the fact that I know that coffee has caffeine and therefore will give me energy. But at the same time, I also knew that it would give me the jitters and it would give me a stomachache occasionally if I drank too much, or I wouldn't sleep well, or it would give me the shakes, or if I had a really important meeting and I had coffee before, I would always be really nervous, even though I was, confident in my work. And the idea behind mindful drinking is just like, okay, take this thing that you do every day and stop and think about it, remove it or reduce it, whatever the case may be, and then pay attention to how your body feels after. And if you feel better, then maybe you don't need to be drinking that thing. And this can apply to alcohol, it can apply to smoking, it can apply, literally it can apply to anything. It's just that the process of mindfulness is, more than just like everybody hold hands and positive vibes. It's just a very practical approach to stopping. And the reality is that the vast majority of people are drinking or consuming things purely out of habit, socially, or just literally because that's just what you're used to doing. And so when I was having these conversations with people in the farmers market environment, it was like I said, nobody had woken up that day thinking like, let me go find a gentle caffeine alternative. It was more that through the course of me describing what I was doing, people would have this, oh, actually, you know what? That sounds like me. And that was really cool.
And at that point, did you think, oh, maybe I should include sort of that mindfulness story, that mindfulness education side? Or was that always your intention from day one to combine the two?
It was the thing that I was always doing, but I never had a label to it. I didn't really sort of understand that there was a whole community here that I could be speaking to in addition to selling this product. And when I launched the brand officially in January of this year, I actually launched it at the Mindful Drinking Festival in the Truman Brewery in London. But that event is predominantly focused on the no and low alcohol space. And the sort of ethos behind that is that there's lots and lots and lots of people who are looking to either drink less or are teetotal and still want to be treated as equals as consumers when they go out, right? So it's like, okay, if I don't drink alcohol, I shouldn't have to drink just orange juice. Like I'm not five kind of thing. And so at that event, I was talking to more and more people who are also brand owners who are in this space. And almost every single person that you meet who has started a no or low alcohol product has had an experience with trying to quit alcohol in the past themselves, or trying to reduce it, or just trying to find better alternatives and not finding good solutions out there. Like almost every single founder has gone through this journey of saying like, hey, I need this thing, I have this need and it's not being fulfilled, so let me go fix it because it cannot just be me. And so that event is crazy. I don't know if you've ever been. It's like 10,000 people over 2 days.
No, but I now definitely want to go.
I know they did a virtual one now because obviously
it's just not the same.
But if it does come back, hopefully it's an annual event. I highly recommend people go to it just to be able to be blown away by the amount of consumer choice that is coming out of just like really high quality products. And so anyway, to answer your question, the conversations that I was having through meeting people in that space made me realize like, oh, one of the reasons so many of these products are being created is because the need exists within every single community, whether that's like in the alcohol space or in the caffeine space, whatever. And the number one way that event has been successful is just through conversation. So the founders started by having conversations with other people about this like similar challenge or same challenge. And so when I first started selling the product, I realized obviously COVID happened first. So that was a whole thing. And I realized that the only way that you're going to be able to get people to understand what this product is to first talk about the root and the source of the reason it exists, as opposed to just selling it.
Exactly.
And I'm a very big believer, as I described my own experiences of going to these health food stores and not really understanding the 19,000 products on the shelves. I'm a really big believer that like consumers need to be well informed, and of course, the responsibility is on me as a consumer to go out and educate myself. But at the same time, there is a duty of care on brands to not misinform the public, right? Like you should take some responsibility for putting out correct information without also trying to sell something, which is very counterintuitive.
Don't take their marketing too far.
Exactly. It's very counterintuitive to some brands to say like, I'm going to do a lot of this marketing effort, but I'm not going to explicitly do it just to sell something to you. But my position is that some of the brands that I am the most loyal to are brands who are creating content and creating conversations and building community around the idea of like, hey, here's a problem, let's talk about it. And then if you want to buy this thing that I make, cool, but
Exactly.
you should also bring
Educate,
value. Yeah.
bring people together with the same common values. And it's so easy to now in terms of social media to do
Yeah.
that, which, more and more brands are jumping on that, which is fantastic to see. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know though, January you publicly launched, which is super exciting, and then COVID hit, and the world kind of went into a little bit of state of despair /
Yeah.
still is.
Yeah.
What's the next stage for Kashmiri Tea House? Because it obviously you're not in a tea house at the
Mhm.
moment. Where do you want to go? Is it always, do you think, always going to be like a
No,
virtual
I
tea
lost you again,
house?
Stephen.
Am I back? Am I back? Am I back? Hello, I'm back. I'm not back. Everyone can hear me. No one can hear you. We're both frozen together, but we're not frozen at all.
Hey, you're back.
You're back. When you listen to this back, that little bit is just going to be me going, I'm back, I'm back, I'm back, I'm back, I'm back. But yeah, my question is, what's next? Where do you want to take this? Where is Kashmiri Tea House going to go in your world?
So,
I love that. So,
quick context. So when I first launched, my whole sort of commercial and retail and marketing strategy was to go direct to specialty retail. I was aware of the value and the benefit of being a direct to consumer, purely online brand, but it wasn't where I felt like I wanted to focus my effort completely. And so I had signed up for throughout the year for trade shows and consumer shows because that's kind of conventionally the best way to meet buyers. Obviously, with COVID, that is no longer an option. So in March, I had to pivot quite quickly from my whole plan that I had spent, however many months building into being a DTC brand. So the advantages, of course, of that is that I was still in control of moving product because I had produced this whole batch. And one of the challenges with making products with natural ingredients is that you actually have a shorter shelf life than you do when you have, non-natural
yeah.
ingredients. And so being able to do direct to consumer was great and has continued to be great. I sold out of the entire batch. And the idea at the time, at the beginning, was if I can get to the customer by going to where they're shopping anyway, then that's the most logical route.
Mm-hmm.
But the experience that I've had over the last couple of months, A, through direct to consumer, and then B, through building this community and talking about sort of anxiety and mindful drinking and mental health in general, has been like a whole different experience. So in an ideal world, what I want to do is continue to be a direct to consumer brand, because honestly, we don't know when this whole thing is going to end. I think one of the ironies of the brand that I'm creating or the community that I'm building in the context that we live in is that I have these conversations all the time about anxiety and how control is like a really big component of feeling anxious. And it's like we're in the most, like the ultimate of not in control situations like that I've ever been in. And so rather than taking a very hard line approach of, okay, this is my plan now for the next 6 months or the next 12 months, I'm very much just going with the flow. It's going to be what it's going to be.
We shall see.
No one has any influence over how fast or not this vaccine is going to show up. And, it's you just have to take it a day take every day as it comes.
100% agree. Which is just an interesting world we live in right now, especially when we think about business growth and planning, like you said, how do we plan certain things in our lives at the moment. But listen, I absolutely love the story, and I cannot wait to get my hands on some. I really mean that, because you've not only sold the story to me, but you've sold me the experience of it as well, which I think is so crucial nowadays in terms of buying into brands, like we said earlier. So I guess my final question is how can people follow the?
Lost you, Stephen.
Can you? Am I back? Am I back? Again, I'm back. I'm back. See, everyone watching this and listening to this is going to be like, oh, Stephen's just talking on his own, but I'm not. Am I back? Am I back?
You're back.
I'm back. Again, I do a little song now whenever I leave for some reason. But yeah, my final question is, how can people follow you guys? How can people follow the journey and be involved?
Yeah. So first thing, as soon as I have another batch in, I will send you some cases.
Yes.
So look out for those whenever that is. And we're on Instagram at Kashmiri Tea House. We're on Twitter at KTH Cold Brew, and Facebook on Kashmiri Tea House. I'm running a series of IGTV live conversations. The series is called Mindful Drinking and Anxiety, where I kind of just interview different people from the whole spectrum of mental health. So whether it's therapists or life coaches or everything in between, just talking about different aspects of anxiety. So a couple of days ago, I had a relationship coach on. We were talking about relationships in lockdown, ironically, and how sort of anxiety manifests itself in different ways. Next week, we're doing one with a psychologist talking about habits, particularly through a cultural lens from the South Asian community, and how anxiety is made worse through those habits. And yeah, so I've just got this series that's running on an ongoing basis. There's like 5 or 6 from the past. And so, yeah, you can follow along there as well. I think they're live, but you can watch them on demand as well. Like
watch them on IGTV.
IGTV.
Asma, thank you so much for coming on. And yeah, I really do look forward to getting that batch when you next go back into the brewing kitchen.
Oh yeah. I'm as excited as you are to have them made.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone else for listening and watching. This has been Founders 365.